Welcome everyone. Welcome to what is possibly our sixth webinar for the year. We started off quite small, but we've grown enormously over the last month or so. We've got about 140 members that have registered with the network from all across the Pacific. We've got Australia, New Zealand, and right around the Pacific, we've got people joining us. And so I'd like to welcome our speaker for today. So welcome everyone. Bola, namaste, assalamu alaikum, kia ora todo, and welcome to Ralph, who will be our speaker for today. Ralph is a learning technologist at the Fiji National University Center for Flexible and E-Learning. He's part of the learning design team responsible for developing and supporting online and blended instructional materials. He has, over the last 5 years, been involved in the e-learning landscape, and over the last 10 years, he has extensive experience in the ICT arena, both in financial and academic institutions. He's a recent graduate of the University of Sydney with a master's in learning science and technology. His interests lie in interactive and collaborative technology, especially in the area of flipped classroom learning. And for the past 2 years, Ralph has been piloting the electronic portfolio platform Mahara for practicum courses and industrial attachment at the Fiji National University. And they've been piloting this as an alternative to paper-based workbooks. In his talk today, he'll be sharing his journey with ePortfolios at the Fiji National University. Welcome, Ralph, and we look forward to your presentation today.
Thank you again, Dr. Jalal, and thank you again for giving us opportunity to use this particular network as a platform to advocate our various expertise in terms of sharing the different practices we use for the learning technologies that we use in the different institutions that we come from. And like Dr. Jalal had mentioned, my presentation today it'll just be a reflective piece, more like. It'll just be about how we have integrated ePortfolios in mostly our work placements, attachments, and practicums at the Fiji National University. I'll try to make my presentation as short and painless as possible, and I'll try to leave most of your queries right at the end for the Q&A sessions. So basically, this is my presentation in a nutshell. Like Dr. Jalal had mentioned, at the Fiji National, I'm currently employed by the Fiji National University. It's not more than, I believe we had our 10-year anniversary last year. And I think, we are not technically a young institution, but FNU is special in the sense it's an amalgamation of various institutions in Fiji that have been founded over the past, well, you can say over the 100 years, if you include the Fiji School of Medicine. And my department is the Center for Flexible and E-Learning. We're an extension of the Distance and Flexible Learning Department. In the former FNU, before they were amalgamated, I believe the various institutes had their own DFL sections, and I believe Dr. Jalal was one of the founders at FSM. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Yes. So basically, at these DFL centers, it was mainly or predominantly the production of print-based materials mainly for the distance learners. But over the years, it has evolved with time and technology as well. And most of the instructional materials have been transferred online. And the what the former distance and flexible learning department have, how would I say, have grown into online and blended materials. And as such, I believe the Fiji National University had thought of expanding this, and that's why they've created this new department. Well, CFL is not more than 3 years old. I think it's a little bit more than 3 years old, and we're a fairly new establishment. Yeah, and we've had our it's been a roller coaster of a ride these past 3 years, and with the pandemic, it has have made our department the focal of attention now, since everything has been converted online. Yeah, and like Dr. Jalal mentioned, our department is mainly in the business of designing and developing online and blended learning materials. And yeah, so, and we're not only restricted to that, one of our major roles as well is advocating various learning technologies that advocate various tools to enhance the learning and teaching of the whole institution. I believe that's why we're under the PVC learning and teaching section. So that's why that's how we are. That's how we are involved in learning, in most of the learning and teaching matters at FNU. In the LDD department, my role as a learning technologist, like I just mentioned earlier, one of my major roles is advocating these various tools. That's why I believe this particular network is very essential in sharing the various practices. So in terms of learning technologies, we are a small cohort of people, and I believe these kind of platforms ensures that these tools are effectively advocated and practiced in various, whether it be learning and teaching or various institutions. Yep, so that's basically me in a nutshell, or our FNU in a nutshell. And yeah, so enough of the boring stuff. I know everybody's here for electronic portfolios. So before I actually jump into what an electronic portfolio is, I usually, when I do my presentation, I take 2 steps back and I try to define what a portfolio is, basically in a nutshell. So when I usually do my presentation, I often, mainly more specifically for our pre-service students. So yeah, pre-service students, sorry, are those students who've just left high school, and they have yet to experience, say, workplace attachments, etc. So I usually have 2 presentations, one for the pre-service and in-service. So I often use this particular slide as an illustration to define what a portfolio is. Since they've left high school, so I usually use this simple illustration of a high school cabinet. So what I usually tell them is, okay, this, to define a portfolio is looking at your high school cabinet. So if you look at this high school cabinet, it has various items that you've collected through your years in high school. So you have your school magazines, your maps, your CDs, oh, sorry, your various projects that you've collected through the years, and your trophies, etc., your certificates, and various other items you've collected through your learning journey in high school. So if you had to define what a portfolio is, it would be this bookshelf, and it would, so a portfolio would technically be a collection of all the items or evidences that you've collected through your learning journey. So that's how I firstly define what a portfolio is. At least when I'm doing my presentation, they have this particular image of a bookshelf at the back of their head. So they know, oh, okay, it's a collection of various items. So it's evidences. So I have these, I think my word cloud sort of went wrong yesterday. I was trying to do a word cloud, but so these are a few words that often pop up. So it's artifact. So you'll hear me during most of this presentation saying artifacts. So artifacts is just basically a synonym of all these words that are up here. Your collection of items, your evidences, your display, and your documentation. So when we talk about ePortfolios, we often use this word interchangeably. It's a collection of artifacts or evidences collected over a period of time to display or to showcase your learning journey. If we had to zoom it into a student learning portfolio, right? So that's for me, that's what I usually use to define what a portfolio is. And for our in-service students, I often try to relate what a portfolio is about when they did their attachments or when they did their work placements. It's usually, this is what a practicum folder or logbook usually looks like. The misconception about this is when they do go out, the logbook is like a thin 10-pager or 1-pager. And when they do come back, it's loaded in these huge bulk folders. And they're expected. So usually what happens is when they go, after they've done a certain requirement, several units, I believe some of the participants here at FNU and other institutions where they do work placements. So the usual trend is after they've completed a set of units, one of their final, I think, qualifying units is for them to go out and do an attachment. So in this case, what they expected is they're to go out for a period of time, say 6 to 12 months, and they expected to collect all their logs all throughout those during that time period. Sorry, yeah, and usually the trend is when they come after their 6 months, like I mentioned earlier, they go with a few 10-pager back to back or 1-pager, and they come back with these huge bulk folders. And this is like what's the current trend right now, especially for practicum teachers when they go out, or medical interns, or even the say the attachees. They go out and they're expected to meet certain guidelines, or in the logbook, they're expected to meet certain hours and various competencies. So when they come back, they log it in, and it verifies whether they will, sorry, whether they've met all the various criterions and they could carry forward and graduate. And in this process, they are literally swarmed or flooded or drowning in paperwork. So that's the current reality of things right now. Yeah, and so after they come back and they return their folders to the practicum office, and it's stored in these huge cabinets, waiting for the administrative services or the administrators to give them confirmation whether they finally met all the criterions and are cleared to graduate. And after all that hard work in 6 months, those huge folders and hard work is all stored in this folder. After they've given the all clear to graduate, are stored in this folder, waiting to be terminated or waiting to be destroyed. So yeah, that's what the current work placement scenario is for most institutions. I can vouch for that. Where they go out, they collect all the evidences, they collect it and they collate it, and it's stored in these huge folders left to dust. and rotted with the iron metal cabinets, ready to be destroyed again. So when they are actually, after they've graduated and they've gone out in the field, they have no way of referring to all those artifacts that they have collected through the years. So all that hard work is just left in these cabinets waiting to be destroyed. And I guess, yeah, and that's basically the current trend for student portfolios at this particular time for most institutions. And I guess that's where ePortfolio has come in and tried to help ease that pain and suffering, I would say. Yeah, so with that definition of a portfolio, that brings us to what an electronic portfolio is in a nutshell. So like I mentioned earlier, that huge, that picture of that cabinet, that high school cabinet, which I was referring to. Yeah, so an electronic portfolio, this is a definition by Banks. So an electronic portfolio is an electronic format for learners to record their work, achievements and goals, to reflect and share their learning journeys. Although this would give an indication of their high school learning journey, it's not feasible to physically carry around this cabinet, would it? So if you had to convert it into electronic portfolio, you would convert it to the various electronic means that, or mediums that are out there, right? So like how we collected all the various artifacts and stuffed it into one folder, practicum folder, an electronic portfolio lays it out in an electronic format, right? So you've noticed I've put, apart from the 3 artifacts that are related to the actual the practicum, I've also included the high school cabinet. So what I'm trying to say, it does not only refer to all the various items that are related to the program, but you can add in extra curricular activities or items to it. So in these 2 diagrams, I just like to illustrate that rather than all are just shoved into one folder, it's structuredly, sorry, that's the wrong word. It's presented in a way that you're able to display all your various skills and competencies, right? So why use an ePortfolio? So like I just had mentioned earlier, it's mainly to communicate and showcase skills and experiences in learning. So it's not specific to the discipline, but you can add in other related items which contributed to the final product. One of the major key items in electronic portfolios or portfolios in general are reflections, right? That's what differentiates it from other aspects. Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, it contains diverse artifacts. It's not only limited to text, so it can contain pictures, videos, presentation, lab reports, and more. Like how most of the time they're flooded in paper, or they're actually drowning in paperwork. All the documents, etc., are clearly laid out and stored in electronic format, and then you can easily transfer it easily with the various mediums that you use. And another advantage or some of the characteristics of ePortfolios is you can contextualize the artifacts with reflections, like I just mentioned earlier. Like any Tom, Dick, and Harry can like take a photo of say a particular item and say that it's theirs. But with an added reflection, it adds a more personal touch to it, because no one else would be able to better relate to that particular item than that particular individual himself. So that's the advantage about ePortfolios. It allows individuals to contextualize each artifact through reflections. So yeah, yeah, in terms of the actual institution-wide why they use ePortfolios. It provides supervisors and relevant college and staff a way to view their internship logbooks and the progress of their internship. So the usual trend is they usually get their logbooks or all their workplace placement reports after they've done the 6 months. So the advantage about the ePortfolio is they can actually track them while they are in the field or in the industry. So that way they can better guide them if they happen to sort of stumble or are stuck somewhere. And for the institution to actually track what's the progress of their completion. So that way they can provide the needed feedback for them to complete it or to encourage them to complete in a way. Yep. And I think the same one is below. The system shall provide an aggregated view of progress. So you can check their progress in real time. So whatever artifacts and reflections they can put, you can see it in real time, depending on the various competencies that you put up, right? Yep. So those are some characteristics of an ePortfolio. At FNU, this is a concept map of or model that we use for ePortfolios at FNU. At FNU, we use the Mahara platform for our electronic portfolios. There are various other platforms that are used, but I believe this is one of the common ones. I believe the other ePortfolios that I know of, I believe PebblePad for Canvas, if you're using the Canvas platform. And if you're using Google, I think Google has their own ePortfolio platforms, as well as the edX systems. edX, I think, for MOOCs. Yep. So you'll notice it's, it's not exactly a cyclic process. It's more like, it's all interrelated. So it's not, I often say it's, it's often interrelated rather than cyclic. And it's not often a linear phase like what you see here. It's non-linear in nature because you don't have to start from point A going on to point B. You can start with your reflections, or you can start compiling. Or while you're compiling, you'll reflect on what you've done previously. So it's not linear in nature, but in terms of a workflow process, usually what we expect learners to do is whatever they learn in the classroom, they take it and they apply it in the real world. They compile all their evidences and artifacts and reflect upon it. And they display it on the Mahara platform. And the cycle goes on. Or they can, like I said, it's all interrelated. So they can start from wherever. You can start from a reflection, like what are their course expectations, and they go backwards. Or they can start applying their skills and reflect and collect later. So it's really up to them. Right. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we use Mahara. This is the definition of ePortfolios in mahara.org. So Mahara is two things: an electronic portfolio and a social network system combined. So when I usually have my presentations with the pre-service or the in-service students, I usually tell them just think of the ePortfolio or Mahara ePortfolios as something like Facebook, a social media platform, but for educational purposes. Because most of the functionalities are quite similar. The only difference is this is quite structured in the sense they have to follow certain guidelines in the way they create or collect their evidences, right? So one major issue that we usually face is them getting confused with the two platforms. So one is our current learning management system, which is Moodle, and Mahara. So at FNU, it's an integrated, Mahara is integrated with Moodle, so they don't need to log in independently or separately. So all they need to do is just log in through the Moodle platform using the same credentials. They'll be able to access Moodle. They will be able to access Mahara through a link on Moodle, right? So we try to use this table to differentiate the two in terms of their functionalities and their characteristics. So like Moodle, most of them use Moodle most of the time. So for Moodle, most of the courses, how do I say, are teacher-centered in the sense that the teacher or the lecturer are in control of all the contents that are on Moodle. Whereas Mahara, it's more learner-centered in the sense that you, the learner, are the ones that are creating the actual pages. Like for Moodle, the lecturer is the one who are putting up the PowerPoint slides, who's putting up all the lectures, the videos, the audios, etc. Mahara, it's different. It's you who are adding in all the content with the various guidelines that are given by the teacher. In Moodle, it's more like I mentioned earlier, it's centered on the course and it's content driven by the instructor. Similarly with that for Mahara. For Moodle, it's more structured, like everything's linear in process depending on how the course is designed. So you have a lecture, you have your readings, your lectures, and then your tutorials, and then you have forums and quizzes, and then the finals at the end. Whereas Mahara, it's more unstructured in the sense it's really up to you how you design the look and feel of your page. It's at the end of the day, it's really up to the user and how they use their creativity in designing those pages, right? Moodle singular view, Mahara, it's collated view in the sense Moodle only contains the unit, the content specific to that unit. So if it's EDXXX, it'll only contain content for that particular unit. Whereas for Mahara, you can, like I said, it's a collection of all your evidences or artifacts through your learning journey or through that program. So you're not only restricted to that EDXXX, you can put in EDYYY and all the other courses that's related to that program. And you can, like I mentioned, like the bookshelf, you can add in other extracurricular activities. Right? So that's some advantages or some differences. Moodle is mainly theory-based, Mahara practicum-based. You actually collecting all the activities. You are using your research skills. You using all your tech skills, etc. You're meeting all the various soft skills that you need to collect or to design your page. And the last one is assessments accessible within the course. So the thing about Moodle is once you graduated, you don't have any access to that particular unit anymore or through Moodle. Whereas for Mahara, even after you've graduated, you can still take your collections with you or your artifacts with you. Rather than it being stored in these rusty cabinets, you can, after your 6 months, you can actually export it and use it in their various practices. So that's one of the advantages about ePortfolios. You're able to take it with you. You're able to use it within the program and take it after you've completed the program. Right? Yep. Just let me know if I'm going a bit too fast. If you have any queries, just put it in the chat box and I should be able to attend to it after this particular presentation. Okay, so at FNU, like I mentioned, this is a reflective piece. So when we first established the department 3 years ago, we thought of introducing ePortfolios subtly to the various schools, because like I mentioned earlier, we were a newly established department and we didn't want them to be overwhelmed with the various learning technologies, because one, we were introducing Moodle, and I believe Moodle was not yet compulsory at FNU. only at certain colleges it was. So with Mahara, from our own experience, if we had started advocating from the very beginning, I mean, at full force, I believe there would have been a lot of people would not have received it as well as now. So we certainly introduced it to various pilot groups across the colleges. So I think we had our first meeting in 2019 and we introduced it. So we set out an expression of interest. In this expression of interest, I think we just put a quota like if the school could nominate at least 2 courses or 2 units or 2 programs that like ePortfolios to be included in. Most of them, we didn't want to put the actual workplace attachments because at FNU it's quite compulsory for most of the units. So we thought of introducing it to the units first before introducing it to the main workplace practicums. So from the 5 schools and from the 5 colleges and 2 institutes, we managed to get feedback from these various colleges. So for College of Education, I think we looked at maths, social science, and it was good. We had it from various levels, so primary, secondary, and I think TVT, tertiary, as well as CMNHS. Sorry, this is incorrect. This is the other college, the College of Business. My apologies. Oh my God, and this is recorded. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so the College of Business was just introduced to it lately. So for the other colleges, yep. So for engineering, I think the automotive team had come and approached us, as well as for CMNHS or the medicine, or formerly FSM. We had trialed it for public health, for environmental public health, and we had initially tried to do it for MBBS, but I believe I was rushing off to studies, so we had put that up, we had shelved it before. I think we were gonna carry that on after I had come back, but currently it's on hold at the moment for MBBS, since most MBBS courses as well, I believe, are on hold as well. So decided to pause that for now. Yeah, so at FNU, we have these various, I've categorized it into 3 aspects. So how we use portfolios. One, for some of the units, we use it for scaffolding lessons or creating portfolios, or having them creating it as a way of creating online tutorials. So that's one way of we use portfolios. The second part is the practical components. That's mainly for those aspects which have a physical component to it, like physical education, like cooking, or all the other various aspects. What I'm referring to is like the actual unit that has the practical components, not the actual workplace. So in due time, we had also introduced it to, just because of this pandemic that we're facing, I think most have approached us in integrating this into a few of their work placements. So yeah, so this is the 3 categories that we use ePortfolios in at FNU, mainly for scaffolding lessons, practical components, and work placement and attachments, right? So in terms of workplace, for practicums, we used it for our mainly high school teaching, and for our internship and attachments, we use the automotive engineering and the environmental public health as examples. For College of Business, they've just currently planning to have a workplace model where they invite industry and have them create various how do I say cases that help integrate their workplace components or in a way create cases or create practicum assessments that replaces the physical attachments, since the COVID crisis have forced people to stay home, and most industries are not willing to accept students. So instead of the institution going to the industry, we have the industry come to us and have the students help tackle a few of their workplace problems with our students, and have it as a workplace alternative, a work placement alternative, if I would say. Yeah. So yeah, so currently we're using, so with reference to the College of Business, so this is what they intend to do. So in the model, in the workplace placement model, they intend to set up is it constitutes of these various aspects. So whereby the real world problem is introduced by the industry, and what the student or the attachee is expected to what the attachee or the intern is expected to do is try to meet the various competencies that they have introduced. Like simple things like soft skill, like simple soft skills, communication skills, etc., or like using the various tools, the tech tools, being introduced to academic skills. So these are important because these are the various skills or competencies that are required by the industry, and the various real world problems or cases that they come up with contribute to the that alternative work placement that they're supposed to actually face. So instead of physically coming to the workplace, they come with their problems, and they have these various workshops or how do I say it, is meet and greet sessions or Talano sessions to discuss how they would effectively tackle that particular problem for that particular workplace. So yeah, that's the current model that we're learning, and this is the main intention for this for those learners who are intending to graduate at the end of the semester, because I believe most of them have 6 months to do the attachment. So we have this particular model provides them an alternative to actually going physically into the workplace. Yep. So yeah, so with that, the electronic portfolio is as unique as the students who create them. Like I had mentioned earlier, no one to portfolio will look the same, and what makes it different is their reflections or how they tackle that particular problem. I think this is also a way we could tackle plagiarism as well. At times, we're mainly focused on the end product, but for ePortfolios, what it does, it does not focus on the final product, but it focuses on the workflow process, their thought processes. So they're not assessed on the end, the final product, but they are assessed on all the activities they did to actually achieve the final product. And you can tell, well, when you go through a few ePortfolios, that not 1-2 students have this same workflow process. This also highlights, it catering for various learner preferences and learner styles. So that's another advantage about it. And like I mentioned earlier, the ePortfolio is fully created or designed or set up by the learner. So here's full guidelines, a good have full control over it. So the only thing that they need to do is follow the various guidelines or competencies that are highlighted to be showcased in their particular design. Yep, and that's an important component in terms of creativity and uniqueness. It is as unique as the students who create them. Yep, so that brings us to the various lessons learned. In terms of planning and scaffolding, I think that's one of the important things that we've learned. It's not something that you can just conjure out of thin air. So like at the Center for Flexible Learning, we actually sit with the subject matter expert and we have a chat about how we can apply this particular scenario in the online environment. And mostly what usually happens is the normal trend is SMEs tend to mirror what happens in the face-to-face classroom online, but that doesn't usually work in reality. So in this case, what happens is initially when we started, I think the whole concept, I think the major misconception was, okay, since it was at the end, we'll introduce ePortfolios. It's usually exit and entry. Yeah? So mainly they're introduced through a, sorry, when I mean introduced, I mean to the actual platform. Yeah? So when they introduce to Mahara, it's only at the very end when they're about to go out and do their practicums, which is unfair on the students because one of the key competencies as well, or key skills that they need to gauge or grasp is the tech skills. It's unfair if we assess them on that particular subject or that particular discipline when we forgot about it being a different platform or tool, and that not being part of the competencies that are included in the rubric or in the various unit components. So yeah, so I think that was one of the major challenges we faced. Well, where most SMEs wanted them to be introduced to Mahara at the very end when they left out. One of the issues with that was not, most of them were, a few of them were in service as well. So that's what we didn't gauge. So excuse me, let me just put the, okay, that's better. Okay. Yeah, so one of the things that we've noticed was when at the end, it was sort of meaningless as well. So they were introduced to the platform and then they left it. So it was useless because after they left or after they've graduated, that particular software was it's sort of meaningless in the sense they only used it once and only for that particular purpose, and it was not used even after they've and it was not used when they left. I mean, when they actually joined the industry. So what we thought about doing when that happened was trying to introduce ePortfolios from the beginning. And that's another challenge. That's one of the challenges I also faced at the previous institutions that I worked in. So ePortfolios were mainly introduced at the beginning, at the end. In between the, I think, second year to third year, there was a gap between when they used it. So it's best to scaffold them from the very beginning right till their exit program. So not only to introduce at the very beginning to introduce the technology, but to use it as tools to enhance their learning within their 3 to 4 years while they're doing their program. So that were one of the major things that we noted in terms of planning and scaffolding ePortfolios. Another thing that we've got out of these 3 years was we need more engagement with the industry, so that they are more involved. I think with this pandemic, I think it's forced industry to come to us because they, most of them are quite constrained in terms of hiring human resources. So with this, this particular this particular model, they're able to solve simple tasks or simple workflow process with using these workplace online work placement alternative. Yeah, so and there needs to be more engagement with the industry from the beginning. The other one is SME empowerment. I believe most of them, right now, I think most of the design of the actual lessons are done by the center. So I think there needs to be more empowerment done in terms of how they will be able to better, use or how they will be able to better champion Mahara, or how they will be able to better champion this particular tool in their particular disciplines. I believe some have been using it, but I guess I'm not really sure. Well, I think Pratika's here as well. I think she'll be able to explain more how she uses ePortfolios in her lessons, but I think she used it in her own way. I think she was not part, she was part of the pilot, but I think she used Mahara in a way that it empowered those course conveners or those lecturers that came after her to use it and effectively use it as a tool to empower learning and teaching in that particular discipline. Yeah. Yep. In terms of guided template, this is another thing that we've learned: guided template versus learner's creativity. What I've noticed is for some, they have very strict guidelines on how to follow the ePortfolio lessons, while others give them the full creativity. And they usually emphasize the fact that you need to give them full creativity in order for them to come up with something that's more relatable and more engaging. But yeah, so I have, yeah, as a team, I believe we've compromised and on those two views. So it's good to be creative, but you can also be creative within a template or within a certain guideline. So that's the approach we took. You can be, we give them the creativity, but you follow just these few guidelines, so that these guidelines are in align with your course learning outcomes, as well as the various competencies for that particular discipline. For the designs for our lessons for these ePortfolios at FNU, I think they had to be more collaboration in the sense in more interdisciplinary how do I say, conversations or talano sessions, because no one discipline is an island. There'll be say for example, what the usual trend is when somebody has say for example, a bachelor of arts, so doing a bachelor in marketing or management. So when they go for their 6 months attachment, it's not right, like really specific that they go to that particular discipline. The workplace criterion is they've just gone for the work placement for 6 months. Correct me if I'm wrong, if Swaran is here as well. So you can always, yeah. So yeah, so in terms of collaboration, I think there needs to be interdisciplinary collaboration, in the sense the marketing team or the accounting team can help the students from others. Especially the issue we had faced last time was one particular few students that did double majors. So some did majors in banking and accounting. So that was the usual thing, that usual issue that we faced, that some of the accounting gang couldn't find, accounting students couldn't find, accounting or banking students couldn't find any work placement in that area, and they ended up in a different discipline. And I think there needs to be more conversation amongst the faculties. Another thing we've effectively, we knew was very effective, was the integration of social media. I believe this was one of the questions that was raised at one of the very first network sessions that we had, how to integrate social media into electronic portfolios. So like I mentioned earlier, when they go out for their 6 months, they are not enrolled in a course or unit. So the idea of having social media is a way of having them communicate and share their ideas, sort of like a community of practice while they're out. At least while they're collecting or collating or applying all the various aspects to their portfolio, they can be sharing it with their fellow peers or colleagues. I think that proved very effective. And one thing I noticed was when I left the lecturer out or the course convener, they were more actively engaged. So I left that as it is. And on top of that, it's social media. It's not a educational platform. So when I let them be, they were more creative in the way they came up with all their evidences or artifacts. They were able to share it and even help each other out. Like if someone had a particular issue. This was mainly prevalent for the automotive engineering. So when they went out and they did some of their, say, practicals. So some of them had issues with, oh, I had problems fixing this particular issue. So the advantage about having the social media platform, they were able to use it as a reflection tool as well. So they can bring their problems, they can put it up, and the other peers could help figure them out. I could help them tackle those problems with them. And it was, I noticed it was somewhat of a support system for them as well when you use social media. So that way, it sort of encouraged them, or it motivated them to collect or to collate all their evidences in the ePortfolios. And it was quite successful. They managed to put up all the evidences, and they managed to showcase it in time. Yeah. So yeah, and the last one was more advocacy. Like I mentioned earlier, we had to do it very subtly. So when this pandemic came, I think everybody was forced to try out electronic portfolios. Yeah, but not which when I mean more advocacy, I'm not referring to the tech aspect. I'm referring more along the line of the pedagogical aspect of electronic portfolio, the practice rather than the technology, because anybody can create a page, or can create a lesson, or can create a guided, say, um, guided instructions. But in terms of actually scaffolding them and helping them relate all the concepts and how it's aligned to the learning outcomes is another thing that I think that's where our department comes in and helps. That's how we help all the other subject matter experts. Yeah, and that's basically FNU ePortfolios in a nutshell. I think I'll just take a 5-minute. I think I've exceeded my break, and I'm just in time for demo and practice. I think I'll just take maybe a 2-minute break, and then I'll do some question and answers before I go to the actual demo and practice. Hopefully it works. Sorry, I'll just try and turn off my camera. I think the sun's in my face. Any questions so far?
Pinaka, Ralph, that was very interesting. And thank you for sharing those FNU experiences as well. I had a question, but it was more around what has been done. And I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I was just interested in the whole ePortfolio using Mahara. And, I see the enormous value to students being able to take what they've done, after they graduate. And I think that's been something, for those of us that lead programs, that we hear constantly from students around, I wish I was able to take my discussion that I had with my colleagues, because there was some really important things in there. So being able to export that and carry it on after graduating, or look back on it, reflect on it, it would be quite useful. What I was really interested in knowing more about was, how did you bring the placement to the students during COVID?
Sorry, yeah. So currently, yeah, like I had mentioned earlier, I think for medical students, I believe because of ethical reasons, I think we couldn't carry forward with using electronic portfolios, mainly because they were not allowed into the health facilities physically. So we had put that on hold. And I think we had given them, I think the CMNHS team, Sanya, just correct me if I'm wrong. I think gave them alternative assessment to assess that particular, I think, internship requirements. If I yeah, and for CBHTS, like I've just mentioned earlier, so they took this model as an alternative, whereby they integrated their projects as well as having industry, including industry. Sorry. So yeah, so including industries in their projects, whereby they invite them for guest talks and where they do various activities as an alternative to the actual practicum that they will be doing if they had to be physically in a workplace. So all the various criterions were converted into activities, and we invited we'll be inviting industry to have them come up with various scenarios or say activities or problems that they usually solve, that they find hard to tackle, and they put it as scenarios for the various attachees. So we use that as an alternative for them. So those currently, those are the two. The other one is so for the teaching students, I think for physical education, instead of physically coming and doing their practicums, they actually do their own recordings with their own bubble or group, and then they send it in with their reflections on the electronic portfolio platform. Yes, and for the other schools, or for CEST, they've gone for the other alternative means where they have, I think, a project-based approach, not necessarily on Mahara, but on Moodle, where they are given a set of projects or questions to tackle, and they just submit it directly on Moodle. The others, yes, are using Mahara. For College of Medicine, Environmental and Public Health, they're taking the same approach, where the industry comes to them. So if you'd like to know more information about, I think the best person would be Dr. Sorry, Sanya, who looks after EVH courses. Sorry, but
Dr. Lendua?
Dr. Lendua. No, the wife, sorry.
You mean Amelia?
Yeah,
Dr. Amelia.
Dr. Amelia. So she looks after environmental health, and I think that, yeah, she does it for her various causes. So she has I think she has connections with the public health group, and what they do is they come in and they help them out with the various activities or projects that they need to tackle. Similarly for College of for teacher training, it's the same thing. Most of for TVT, it's fine because they're in-service teachers. So what we do is, as an alternative, we create certain activities, which instead, because they already done the practice, so we create activities where they reflect on their teaching and how they would be able to better apply what they've learned in the real world situation, or how they are currently practicing, like somewhat of a COP version of ePortfolios. Yep. For the others, for College of Business, is what I just had mentioned, and for KEF, I'm not sure of KEF. I think they have their own version. We have yet to meet with them, and I'm not sure about NTPC. I think Swaran will be able to help you with that. What's the other alternative that they're using for industrial attachments? And hopefully that would be able to answer your question if need be. Yep. Oh, great. Yeah. Any other questions? Operatic is one. Maybe Swaran would be able to explain what's the alternative medium that their team is using for NTPC for the attachments or practicums.
Bula, Ralph, Bula, everybody.
Sorry for putting you on the spot. I couldn't find.
No problem. I'm sorry for attending a little late. I had a few things to do. We've been on Zoom since the morning. That was a really good presentation, Ralph. Actually, I learned quite a lot from it as well. We do use Moodle. We have actually started adapting to it, but because of the variety of in-service programs we have, Moodle doesn't really, cut it for us. So there are times when we need to, go through different types of tools and see what works in which situations. Like a classic example, I have a class at the moment. We have 40 participants in it. 75% of the class are from ICT industry, and Moodle on its own is not good enough in their case. So we have to sometimes go online and supplement the Moodle notes and videos, whatever we may have. We need to supplement them with additional Zoom sessions, and some lecturers, some training staff are finding it rather exhausting. But on the same note, we are competency based, so we don't quite give marks. You are either competent or you're not competent. For example, you can either completely configure DNS or you can't. You cannot partially configure DNS and you cannot be called competent in it. So that makes it quite a challenge for us. So we have certain criteria because we are ISO 9001 certified, and so is TAFE, and most of our collaborators that we have, majority of them have their own internal quality practices. So we have to have compliance. Due to those reasons, it's not very straightforward for us. For example, we also do things like there's a program and there's a participant that says that I know, out of 5 of these competencies, I am well aware of 4 of it. I do it every day. So we have to actually assess them on the spot, in front of the supervisors, in front of the project teams. So for that purpose, we cannot, just use one tool. It all depends on what the assessment is about. It all depends on, because, and as it is, 75% of the curriculum is what industry wants. We have those iTech teams where industry representatives tell us what sort of students they'd like us to groom for the industry, So we have to keep adapting to different things. And I'd really hope that, I actually wish that one solution could do everything for us. But I will also talk to my team if they'd like to explore Mahara. I know some other products of Mahara that are doing quite well. So yeah, thank you for that. I would love to explore it further. But and happy to answer any questions on behalf of NTPC.
Oh, that's great. I think Pushpa is Pushpa from CMNHS. Is this the same Pushpa or a different Pushpa? Okay, she's not.
Yes, Ralph, she is from the College of Medicine.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you'd like to share your experience with the logbooks. Sorry, I'm putting people on the spot right now.
I don't
worry, you don't have to answer. It's okay.
She might not be there, Ralph.
Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe connectivity issues.
Right. Yeah, just an open question to the participants. Do you use any other say electronic portfolio platform in your institution or in your learning environments? Sorry, a platform where you're able to gauge or see the various skills and competencies of the learner.
Here
at the AUT?
AUT, we use Mahara, Ralph. I personally don't, though I do run a placement program, and it's running currently in this semester, so this has been very timely. We do have a portfolio for that, comprising of a number of elements from logbooks to reflections, all of these things. It is something that I have been considering. We are transitioning from what we have currently as our learning management system, which is Blackboard, to Canvas next year. So at that point, I will be integrating a e-learning portfolio software into the new learning management system. So this has been wonderful. It's been timely. It's there's so many lessons that I have learned from your presentation. So thank you. It's things that I will carry forward into my practice.
Oh, great. What's the? I'd pose the same question to you. What's the online alternative to attachments or internships that AUT are using at this particular time? Or is it like most institutions, they've put it on hold?
Currently, because we're not in lockdown, and we haven't been in lockdown for at least a year now, we haven't had to transition into an online placement. So I'm in the health programs, and the alternatives is not as evident as it is in other placement organizations, where you can easily go into a scenario-based online question or assessment. You know, we do have our students in the clinics, so there is more to consider around that. So we haven't been in that situation yet, Ralph. So so we haven't actually come up with alternatives, but I think we may encounter that type of situation in the future. So it's good to start thinking about those.
In terms of collecting the logs, is it still manually done?
No, it's all, everything's electronic, but it's integrated into our learning management system. So they submit it as separate assessment elements.
Oh,
so it forms part of an assessment. They submit their logbooks, they submit their reflections. So there is there's just this, you know, on the learning management system, they go into the submission area and submit it. It doesn't work as well as probably having an ePortfolio software, I would say. In particular, you know, you want students to be able to take those forward into their practice. So they think about, they do reflective journal entries where they think about what does this mean for their practice. So it's always good to kind of, you know, as part of a health practitioner, to engage in reflective practice. So they, you know, it'd be ideal if they can take those in, you know, export them, take them into their practice, have a look at it when they're employed. So yes, it's all electronic at the moment, but not through a ePortfolio software.
That's great. Or yeah, sorry. For Alicia as well, would you like to share your experience with ePortfolios at USP? My last update was 3 years ago, so I think you'll be able to better update us.
Vinaka, Ralph. Actually, I've just joined Pacific TAFE from last year, and just familiarizing myself with the ePortfolio on Moodle. So we are still in it's work in progress, Ralph.
Okay. You still have, is it still introduced as an entry lesson from UU 100?
That I have no idea about, because I'm actually.
Oh, that's for the under. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
yes. I think one of the guys from our CFL would be able to answer that if they were on.
All right.
So
right.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think one of the major, I think for me personally, one of the major challenges in introducing ePortfolios in all the faculties is not the ability to just training them how to use the tool is the easiest part, but actually trying to design the actual lesson or the instructions for each discipline, for each work placement, because it's not like it's quite different. Each discipline has different competencies that they need to meet, but they have a similar underlying skills, competencies, like, you know, the soft skills, etc., which is what they need in the workplace. But like specific, like discipline specific criterions. I think that's one of the major issues I'm facing, because it's not like, okay, I can create this template and the same template can be used for the other disciplines. So when I created it for the teaching college, the student teachers, it was really hard for me to replicate it in the medical field. Sorry.
Sorry, Ralph just disappeared.
Sorry, no, my kids, they know it's past 5 o'clock, so they're like knocking on the door. As I was saying, yeah. So the thing about creating each instruction is quite unique for each discipline. It's not like a one-size-fits scenario, like, you know, like for like Moodle courses. I can use the same template for most of the other, because it's structured in that. For this one, it's because of its I think discipline specific aspect. I think that's why it's a bit I think that's the only challenge that I face. But I believe, I think there needs to be more advocacy in empowering the subject matter expert in actually trying to create their own, maybe having them understand the fundamental aspects of Mahara is, I believe, will be one way of empowering them and having them trying to create their own lessons. Because I believe they were a set of users who've been following me for the past 3 years, and they've been doing a really good job for the past in these few months when everything went online, and how they were able to come up with various instructions or activities to help gauge their learners, learners' engagement in the on Mahara more specifically. Like I mentioned up here, so they got creative in the sense they did not only use the ePortfolio Mahara for their practical component, but they tried to integrate it in terms of curving say plagiarism, like I mentioned earlier. Usually what happens is, you know, we expect them to submit the report, like a final report. So what they've done is they've scaffolded ePortfolios in their lesson, whereby they're able to submit various aspects of their assessments rather than the final bits. So in each will include their personal reflections. So by that notion, you know, not one to say portfolio will be the same. So by the time they submit their final report, the lecturer does not look at the final product, but looks at their workflow process or their thought processes, and they assess them according to that. And they know, okay, he or she has been working towards this final assessment, even though the final product is not what was expected. So, you know, they were able to guide them from the very beginning. And some of them used it as a way to, since everything's online now, as a way to take into consideration the group dynamics of the face-to-face classroom. Like you can't actually, say for example, you can't monitor them when they're geographically displaced. So some activities which they wanted to mirror was, you know, how do I check up on them while they're doing a certain class activity. So with using, so some of them got very creative in doing that. I think it was for the social sciences. So she created it as a non-assessed activity. And in each activity, she grouped them up, and where they were able to tackle these various activities, and they submitted their artifacts every, say, fortnight or in a month. And in the sense, while they're doing this, they initially submit their portfolio at week 1, and when they submit that portfolio, the teacher is able to monitor what they do all throughout the semester just by that one submission. like for example, in a normal like a Dropbox, Moodle Dropbox or Blackboard Dropbox, assignment Dropbox, you just submit the final report, right? Whereas for Mahara, you submit the URL link. And if it's integrated with the system, so what you do is when you submit that that URL link, that the lecturer is able to see what the student has been doing all throughout that particular program or that particular unit, which is sort of an advantage for them. And yeah, and so this is just like 4 or 5 months into the since the lockdown, and I think with a few more months left, I think these the subject matter experts will come up with more creative ideas, and I'm just looking forward to that. And I hope the workplace placements with the College of Business works out, and I'm able to share that later if need be. Yep. So yeah, hopefully all that works out, and yeah, basically yeah, that's electronic portfolios in a nutshell. Hopefully I didn't overwhelm you with too much information and confuse you even more. Yeah, but yeah, with that, yeah, I think that's it from me. Would Sanya, or I think one of my two colleagues is here, Sanya and Alena, if they'd like to add anything. Alena? I'm not sure whether Alena's here. Okay. Oh, she must have gone on. Yeah, I think that's it from mine. If there's no more questions, I think I'll hand it over to Dr. Jalal.
Thank you, Ralph, and thank you for that wonderful presentation. It was very insightful, and there was lots to be learned from your presentation, and I'm excited to explore Mahara over the next couple of months in preparation for 2022. And so I will definitely have a conversation with you around Mahara, and this has been quite insightful, and it's really motivated me to use Mahara. So once again, thank you for your wonderful presentation. If you could, yep, thank you. I will let everyone know about our next or our upcoming presentation. So we have in September, you'll be able to see this on my screen. We have Mr. Amrish Narayan from NTPC, who'll be sharing his experiences on online delivery of short courses, challenges and opportunities. So it's very timely to lead from what you've been doing and hearing about some of the stuff that's already been done at NTPC through Swaran to Amrish's presentation, and also moving from thinking about our traditional courses and programs offered online in higher education to some of the more shorter courses that have been done by other training providers. So I'm looking forward to Amrish's presentation, which is going to be on Tuesday, 21st of September at our standard time of 4 p.m. To 5 p.m. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you once again for joining me today for Ralph's presentation, and go well, stay safe, and see you next month.
Malik.
Naka.